Welcome along to the Make It Count podcast. My name is David, and we are the Taylor Bros.
We are.
That's not going to change.
No, I don't think it is.
No.
Episode 108 this week.
Oh well, that's a lot.
Yeah. It feels like a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a significant number mathematically speaking, but
Maybe one day I'll find that out for you.
indeed.
But we're going to... You sent me an article,
I did.
and what was the title of that article?
I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was something like...
Going to bed smarter every day.
Yeah.
Or...
So, one of the things we spoke about last week was Warren Buffett's... Was it last week or the week before?
Oh, maybe it was the week before.
The week before. Warren Buffett's famous 25-5 rule, which I then read an article on... Was it Inc.com?
Yep.
And they were saying, actually, there's some potential that wasn't actually him.
Okay.
And they were saying it's also like, as great as that is, there's a simpler principle that he has spoken of, and it's simply go to bed smarter every day. And they then linked to another article where they talked about that. We didn't think the article added awful much, but we did think that was an interesting principle and definitely something that was worth an episode on. What does it look like to go to bed smarter than you did yesterday?
Yeah, and I suppose I thought that there was going to be more to it than that. But ultimately, that is the principle.
That's the idea.
Have you done something in your day, whether it's a video course, where it's some skills you've developed, or as Buffett sort of really emphasises, reading? Have you learned something that day?
Yeah. And I read a couple of other articles that they did at the same time, and it was... And again, you never know how true this is, but they were saying, he spends, I think they were like 80% of his own time. I don't know what that means. Is that his time at his work or his time outside of work, but reading? And and then another article, how to spend, more time reading efficiently, and apparently 500 pages a day, which sounds like an awful lot.
Yes. So why did you want to talk about this?
Well, we're the Make It Count podcast. We want to make what we do actually meaningful, and learning is obviously a huge value for both of us. And I think, we're in a world that is no longer anywhere near approximating to static. So perhaps it used to be generations ago, you would learn what you needed to by effectively observing your elders, observing what your father and mother did, and just copying them, and you were apprenticed into the family trade. And there may every now and again crop up new things that you would not have encountered before, and you would have to figure that out. But obviously we are in a different space today. That is not at all the same. Many people have never done anything like an apprenticeship. We don't do that slow forming. The world is coming at us, changing every single day. The rate of technological advancement has rapidly increased. Whether or not that will continue is not for us to talk about now, but it feels like if you are not constantly learning, then actually you're potentially, I don't want to say you're missing out, or I don't want to say you're behind, because again, that can feel like we're putting pressure on people that is always on us. But I think it's just an important thing. We need to be learning, because otherwise we're cheating ourselves of the great opportunities we have. Because with all of this technological advancement, I'll just finish on this, we have incredible training resources, we have incredible information at our fingertips. There has been so much work on how do people learn better, how do we do this, how do we develop, and if we're not making advantage of that, I think we are robbing ourselves of an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I suppose reading is something I really like. I would classify myself as a learner, but that hasn't always been true. When I was at school, I ended up not reading a book for quite a number of years afterwards, partly because of the way that was my experience of it, that it put me off reading, ultimately. And probably many people come out of supposed learning institutions, schools, even universities, with a desire to not want to learn anymore, and actually to earn, and as if they're separate things. But actually, as you said, we are in a changing world, and so learning new things to help us do better in the world is important. The flip side is that it isn't possible to learn everything.
Of course.
There was a time when, the limit of human knowledge was not, it was possible to be knowable by one person.
Yeah.
But now it's not possible to know all there is about everything.
No.
And so, like you said, that can feel like a burden. That can be feeling overwhelming to this idea that there's so much to know. How could I possibly? I won't try.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the thing we're talking about is, can you do something every day to go to bed smarter?
I think as well, it's worth thinking about, what does it look like? What does the word smarter mean? Because so often in our Western, what's the word? The Enlightenment, that rationalistic thinking, it's all up here. Smarter is all up here. Smarts is all up here. I've been reading Proverbs recently, and I've been reading a book about the Proverbs. And one of the things that they say is really interesting about like the ancient understanding of wisdom, the ancient understanding, the Hebrew understanding is that we would think like, what does it mean to be wise? Well, it means someone understands what they should do. Well, the Hebrew understanding is, if you understand what to do and you still don't do it, you're actually a fool. And so by that means, we have so many people that are highly educated. We know what's good for us, and yet we don't do it. That is what they would call the definition of foolish.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does it look like to be smarter? I think sometimes we might be better served in our day and age where everything seems to be cerebral, everything is mental, everything is, what are you consuming, what's the information you're taking on and learning, is actually maybe do something a bit more embodied. It's one of the reasons why I love doing some of the pottery that I've been doing this year, because I'm learning through doing. That didn't work. How do I know that didn't work? Because the clay went everywhere. Let's try this differently this next time. And so what does it look like to go to be smarter today, or learn, to go to bed smarter? That doesn't necessarily mean I've stored some more information. It might even be I've developed relationally. Emotional intelligence is obviously something that's been spoken about a lot in the last decade or two. But that can be something. You know what? I've had that conversation, that same pattern with that person again and again and again. Maybe today I go, how can I be a little bit smarter in that conversation? Not to make it turn to my ends, but to show up in a different way. And then I've maybe grown, and I reflect on that. And we've spoken about that before. The learning cycle isn't just, I take on information and then I take on information, and it requires a pause and reflection.
Mm-hmm.
How did that go today when I tried to do that differently? Okay, that was good. Maybe that wasn't so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I came across a quote recently that basically said, memory is the residue of thought. And so the stuff we put in our memory comes as a consequence of what we thought about. And like you said, learning isn't just about the information that goes in. If you don't think about it, actually, have you even learned it? But once you start thinking about it, once you write about it, once you share that idea of learning as just purely, I listen to a podcast or I read a book, totally important. I'm a big advocate of that. But actually, that learning might come as you sit down at the end of the day and journal a little bit and reflect, how did I show up in this moment? I learned about this. This set me off in a bad way. What does that tell me about me?
Yeah.
Or this set me off in a good way, or this brought me joy. I've learned that about me, or I've learned that about a colleague. I paid attention to how they responded in this situation. Or how could I help them with that? And so learning, like you said, is not just about the mental, the cerebral, it's these other things. And I suppose that's one of the things we're talking about here at the Make It Count podcast is, how can we make those days count?
Yeah.
And that this is an intention, this is a mindset. How can I learn every day?
Yeah.
How can I do that? Ultimately, it's a question, and making that into a small daily practice is a really valuable way, rather than, I'm going to read a whole book today. Maybe you can, maybe you choose your book wisely, or maybe, can I read 10 pages every day for this month?
Yeah, start small. Another article that I think is worth talking about, I sent to you guys this week, was a professor basically said, I gave ChatGPT a test score secretly, and I didn't tell anyone. And so basically he set the assignment for ChatGPT, and then submitted that scores as a fake student for like the people to mark, and they didn't know. And actually it came out bottom. But one of his students had come to him that year and he'd been talking about, instead of like lots of people going, we're just going to ban it, he actually would go ahead of class and try and set the AI questions and see how it responded, and then talk it through with his students and say, this is the state of where it's at the moment. And one of the students came up to him and said, I'm really concerned. I'm coming to the end of my 4-year degree and I feel like because of this AI development, everything I've learned is a waste of time and I'm not going to be able to get a job. And the professor said to him, you know, like, when I was graduating, we were programming with punch cards. And since then, you know, we didn't have email or anything. Since then, the internet's come out, smartphones, everything. So much has changed. And so he was saying, the job isn't to get, you know, to be better than the tech. The job is to learn how to use the tech that we've got. And another thing that I get sometimes is a guy that's trying to sell stuff about AI learning and training and everything. But one of the things he says is, AI won't steal your job, but someone that knows how to use it probably will. And so again, that's where we want to be. We don't want to be putting pressure on saying like, oh, you've got to learn everything and you've got to learn AI. But it's like, partly it is a case of, if we're not learning, we're almost guaranteeing that the person that is learning a little bit every day is eventually going to overtake us. But the other side of it as well, and I suppose my closing thought is, we hold learning as a value, partly because we've learned how fun it is and enjoyable it is. And if you come at life with I'm a learner mindset, I'm a beginner at this, I'm still learning, it almost takes a bit of the pressure off of I have to perform at my best, because you can kind of go, hey, I'm still learning. And there's so much I don't know. In fact, I don't know most things. So why would I expect myself to be able to hit everything all the time? It gives you the freedom of kind of the beginner's mindset. I'm the learner in the room, so no pressure on me.
Yeah, and I think that's the big freedom, when you as a person can go to someone and say, I don't know, but I'm going to learn it. Rather than they expect me to be the expert, so I better be the expert in everything all the time. And we all know that is a bit of a facade and ultimately quite shallow usually.
I think one of the things, there's this great quote, isn't it? It's like, it's something about, you can tell a smart person by the answers they give, but you can tell a wise person by the questions they ask. And again, that goes back to the wisdom thing of, do I really see things and myself accurately?
Yep, and so that's our episode today, the Make It Count podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it. I would love to hear what you are learning and where you've chosen to put some time to what you're